Hey guys, Dr. Childs here. Today we're going to be talking about the connection between your weight and your thyroid function. We're going to be talking about why and how low thyroid conditions, and that includes all low thyroid conditions, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, having your thyroid removed, having it ablated, having thyroid cancer and having it surgically removed, and so on, why those conditions lead to weight gain, not only why they lead to weight gain, but why they often lead to weight loss resistance, meaning it's really difficult to lose that weight. So as we put this together, it should make a lot of sense to you, and it's important to you because once you understand why these things are occurring, then you can actually treat them. I know from experience that tons of patients out there, they suffer from weight gain related to their thyroid, but they're going about it the wrong way. They're using the wrong type of treatments to try and lose weight, and many of the things that they're doing actually cause more harm to the thyroid system. So we'll be talking about that as we go. If you don't know me, I'm Dr. Childs. I'm an internist and I specialize in helping people with thyroid conditions, helping people with hormone imbalances, and of course, helping people lose weight. But today is really about both, right? We're talking about the thyroid, but we're also talking about weight loss and or weight gain, I should say. Now, weight gain is something that a lot of thyroid patients experience. Now, the question is, how are these two things linked? How is your thyroid function linked to your weight? And it's through your metabolism. So your thyroid, whenever it's low, you usually have a reduction in both T4 and T3 thyroid hormones. So when the thyroid is not functioning properly, it's not pumping these hormones out, and these hormones aren't doing the things that they need to for the rest of your body. Now, in the case of your weight, it has to do with T3's impact on your metabolism. Okay, so the thyroid, especially T3, which is the most powerful thyroid hormone in the body, regulates and controls the majority of your metabolism. It's anywhere between 40, maybe 70%, depending on which study you look at. That number doesn't really matter. You should just know that the majority of your metabolism is controlled and regulated by your thyroid. Now, it does this because your thyroid controls the amount of energy and heat that's produced by your cells. It controls and regulates your heartbeat and so on. So you can imagine that even if your body drops, let's say 1 to 2 degrees, like let's say your normal body temperature is 98.6, you have hypothyroidism, so it drops down to 97.6. That 1 degree, that's a lot of energy that is not being used, and it's being regulated by that thyroid. So as thyroid function drops, your body temperature goes down, your heart rate goes down, and all of a sudden now you're burning far fewer calories than you were previously. And this could be on the order of hundreds and hundreds of calories per day, right? So, even if it's 10% of your total metabolism, we're talking 200-300 calories per day, depending on whether you're a man or you're a woman and so on. But that's a significant portion just for doing nothing, right? So what happens to a lot of people is they notice that they start gaining weight, and that's one of the first signs that they notice that their thyroid is off, right? So what do these people do? Well, a lot of them, if they listen to the standard advice of doctors and fitness experts and nutritionists and so on, what they'll do is they'll drop their calories, right? That's sort of like the standard thing that people do. They'll drop their calories and then they'll see if they can lose any weight. Now, the problem is, guess what happens when you drop your calories? It impacts negatively your T3 level. It actually drops your T3 lower, which then drops your metabolism lower. And so if you gain any weight, it will all come back later, and you damage your thyroid in the process. So that is not the way that you need to look at or need to try and lose weight if you have a thyroid problem. Now, a lot of other people who don't have thyroid problems, this may work for them. It may be the case that they can drop their calories, they can lose some weight, and they can re-regulate their system. That is simply not the case if you have thyroid problems because of this negative impact on T3. Now, if you don't have a thyroid, or if you don't have thyroid problems, then your thyroid may be damaged a little bit, but it can rebound after the fact, right? So this drop in T3 can then be corrected later, through the body's own natural mechanisms and regulations and so on. But if your thyroid is already impaired and then you do that, right, it's like adding salt to the wound. It's not going to work. In fact, it's going to get worse at the end of the day, dropping your metabolism further, causing more weight loss resistance down the line. So the question is, what can you do as a thyroid patient to actually fix the problem? And to do that, I want to talk about the other impacts, the downstream impacts that low T3 has on other areas and other hormones in the body, and how those hormones then further impact and make it more likely or more difficult to lose weight. We'll talk about also what to do at the end of this. I'll give you a primer, and that is really you have to fix the thyroid. First and foremost, you have to fix the low free T3 issue. You have to fix that if you want to lose weight, because that's going to be the primary driver of the metabolism. But let's go downstream a little bit. We'll talk about how low thyroid is impacting other hormone systems, and that will also make a lot more sense to you as we go here. So number one is that low T3 causes a decrease in your metabolism. We all understand that. We understand how if your metabolism drops, you will gain weight. That makes perfect sense, right? Nobody's disputing that. Even regular endocrinologists and doctors understand that the drop in the thyroid function reduces metabolism, causes weight gain, and so on. But what a lot of them fail to miss is this second step, which is number 2. Now that is low T3 causes additional hormone problems. Okay, these hormone problems are almost always ignored by regular doctors and standard physicians and so on. And yet they have a really big impact on your weight, and I'll explain how. So again, all this stuff is just physiology. A lot of people will say, hey, do you have any, cite your sources and things like that in the comment section. I do have tons of sources on my blog, so if you want to go look at those sources, you're free to. I'm not going to put them on this video because this is really physiology. Okay, this is just what happens in the body. It's like saying, if you get stressed, does your heart rate go up? And someone say, I need a source for that. That's just what epinephrine does to your heart. Okay, this is just what the thyroid does to these hormone systems. This is just the normal standard physiology here. So let's talk about them as we go. So a decrease in thyroid hormone, again, is known to cause a drop in testosterone. Okay. Now, testosterone is important for both men and women. I would say probably more important for men, but definitely important for women. Now, how does that impact your weight? Well, testosterone is one of the primary regulators of muscle mass. Okay. What do you think happens if your thyroid drops, your testosterone drops, and your muscle mass drops? Well, you're burning far fewer calories than you were previously because the muscles are a huge source of energy production and consumption throughout the entire day. So if you drop that muscle mass because your testosterone dropped, because your thyroid dropped, guess what happens to your metabolism? It is going to go down as well. Again, this is just standard physiology type stuff. This is just how it works. Now, in addition to that, you'll also experience things like decrease in libido, decrease in sex drive, decrease in well-being, or an increase in depression and things like that. So testosterone is not something that you really want to skip. And again, it's important for both men and women. In fact, in many thyroid patients, especially those with Hashimoto's, taking some testosterone is very beneficial to those women because it helps them increase muscle mass, also increase the libido, and reduces depression and mood-related disorders and so on. So don't sleep on testosterone. It is very important. The next thing that low thyroid hormone does is it causes an increase in cortisol. Okay, so an increase in cortisol. Now you probably know about cortisol because it is the primary stress-related hormone. So when you're stressed out, your body pumps cortisol out, and it's meant to sort of help the body regulate that stress and adapt to it. It produces a little bit more energy. It gets blood sugar into your body, changes your epinephrine or adrenaline levels and so on. Now that's okay if it only happens temporarily or for short periods of time. But if your thyroid is constantly down or low, it's going to cause a constant increase in cortisol, and that will cause additional problems. Now again, this is physiology. Look it up if you don't believe me. If you have cortisol, if you have excess cortisol in the body, it will cause certain conditions. And one of those is an increase in fat mass, particularly in the abdomen, or actually let's just call it belly. That'll be easier to write over there. So in the abdominal area or the belly, as cortisol increases fat in that area. Okay. And this is a problem that almost every thyroid patient that I know of has, is the dysregulation or an issue with cortisol. And cortisol can absolutely impact your weight, right? Especially in certain areas. So whenever I look at patients, I'm always looking, where is the body fat distributed on this patient? Is it in their arms? Is it in their legs? Is it in their belly? Is it in their chest? Is it in their butt or thighs? All of those things can tell you or can give you a lot of information about the hormone imbalances that person has. And the belly is one of those places where fat goes if it's related to cortisol. Okay. The next thing that low thyroid can cause are issues with your sex hormones. And in a woman, this usually manifests as a drop or a decrease in progesterone. So again, what does this manifest downstream, or how does this manifest downstream? It causes a decrease in ovulation and issues with fertility. Okay, so one of the most common symptoms of hypothyroidism is infertility, and this is why. Okay, but what you may not realize is that a drop in progesterone also leads to an increase or relative increase in estrogen, and estrogen is a primary driver of fat mass in women. Okay, so indirectly, what's happening as thyroid hormone drops, progesterone levels drop, that causes imbalance in estrogen and progesterone ratio, and then that increases fat mass. So that fat mass is different from the abdominal fat mass. The fat mass that you tend to get if you have excess estrogen can be in the arms, it can be in the breast, in the butt, and in the thighs, that sort of area. And so that tells you a little bit different story about what sort of hormone is driving that issue. And then the degree to which this will impact you depends on the person, right? Depends on the woman. Do they also already have PCOS? Do they not struggle with anything related to that? Do they have additional problems, and so on? But what you need to understand is that drop in progesterone also can lead to increase in fat. The next thing is that there's two hormones here. We're going to talk about them kind of together because they really sort of go together. But what we know is that the thyroid also helps regulate two important hormones. One is leptin and one is insulin. I personally think leptin's probably, out of the five here, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, out of the five here, I would say leptin's probably one of the most important in terms of managing your weight, and that's impacted by your thyroid. So as thyroid hormone drops, it makes you more susceptible to developing something called leptin resistance. I have entire videos on that topic, so if you want to get into it, you can. What I want you to understand is that leptin resistance, leptin itself helps to regulate, or is supposed to help regulate, how much fat you have at any given time on your body. If you have any sort of issue with leptin, or you start to develop resistance at the level of the brain or in other tissues, then you have a big problem and it makes weight loss very difficult. Now, what you need to understand, if someone listening to this, is that as T3 levels drop, it makes this condition more likely to occur, which is not good, right? What it also does is it impacts your insulin sensitivity. Now, you know this. This is very common. About 50% of people in the US have some degree of insulin resistance, and it absolutely contributes to weight gain. If you don't believe me, look at any diabetic who's taking insulin, who has insulin resistance. You'll see almost universally they're all overweight, at least to some degree. So insulin resistance also contributes to weight gain, as well as leptin resistance. Okay, so these things are all kind of going together. Now, the question really becomes, how do you treat this? How do you fix this problem? Do not focus on calories. That's the most tempting thing for people to do. Remember what happens to your thyroid as you drop your calories. It may help you to temporarily drop your weight, but it will cause thyroid damage in the problem, which will cause this cascade of symptoms, right? All these things will then occur more rapidly and in a more robust manner based off of how decreased that thyroid function is. So do not, even though it's tempting and you want a quick fix, do not drop your calories. Instead, you have to focus on increasing thyroid function. Now, you can do that through a number of ways. Probably the easiest way is to take thyroid medication. If you are on the right dose and type of thyroid medication, usually something that contains T3 thyroid hormone, that will increase your metabolism and that will help this part of it, but it may not fix this problem. Now, you can also do things like changing your diet. Changing your diet does impact your thyroid positively or negatively. You can take thyroid boosting supplements. I've got plenty of those if you want to look at those. Natural therapies like reducing stress, getting more sleep, and so on. All of these things can help improve the thyroid, increase that T3 level, and help increase or at least regulate that metabolism. But what about these issues? Just fixing this problem doesn't guarantee that you will fix these issues. So these need to be looked at on a case-by-case basis and maybe treated separately. So whenever you look at thyroid, I always look at the other hormones as well. I'd never recommend that you just go in if you have thyroid problems and say, just look at my thyroid, but ignore all my other hormones. It's not going to work out, okay? So that's why I often recommend you get everything tested together. Now, in the case of testosterone, you could actually just take testosterone, so TRT or testosterone replacement therapy, and that can actually help with the muscle mass and help increase fat burning capacity and so on. When it comes to cortisol, you can use things like adaptogens or adrenal glandulars. So over-the-counter supplements can help you with this, as well as getting more sleep, reducing your stress, and so on. Progesterone you can actually take over the counter as well. Testosterone is a prescription medication, but progesterone is available over the counter, and you can get it bioidentical versions of it in the form of creams and gels and so on. And taking progesterone may be warranted in this case, and that will automatically increase it because you're taking the very thing that you need. Leptin and insulin, these are a little bit different. Oftentimes you need prescription medications to help with these. There are various prescription medications. Again, I've talked about these at length. Most medications that treat leptin also treat insulin, and vice versa. If it treats insulin, it probably treats leptin as well. And there are supplements that you can use to treat both of these conditions. But remember, all this should be done together. So as you're fixing your thyroid, look and see if you have any hormone imbalances, address those, and what you will find is as you fix these problems, your weight will naturally start to come off. You may have to change your diet, but by changing your diet doesn't mean reducing your calories. So I have so many patients where I have them eating healthy, of course, but I don't actually add any exercise or anything like that, and they just effortlessly lose the weight as we fix these problems, okay? Now, they're not going to get back to their perfect starting position, but most thyroid patients, as they fix these problems, will lose 20 to 30 pounds, no problem. The last, maybe 5, 10, 15 pounds will require a little bit of effort in terms of exercise and so on. But getting the majority of the weight off is possible by addressing these issues. So this might be new to a lot of you here. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. And if anything wasn't clear, also let me know and I can expand on these things. Each of these topics themselves could be a completely different video and blog post. And so I have additional resources if you want to look into those. If you haven't already, make sure that you download my free thyroid PDF resources. I have tons of information all designed to help thyroid patients like you feel better, lose weight, manage their symptoms, and so on. So make sure you get those in the link below if you haven't already. And otherwise, I will see you guys in the next one.